So I want you to imagine letting someone drive a massive 18-wheeler truck through a blinding mountain blizzard today.
Oh, wow. Sounds like a terrible idea.
Right, but imagine you let them do it simply because they passed a basic driving test, on a sunny Tuesday, like 10 years ago.
Yeah, that is terrifying.
It is. But in high-hazard industries where a single mistake doesn't just mean a dented bumper, but literally costs lives or blows up pipelines, that terrifying gap between a past test and current reality is, well, exactly how business is being done right now.
It's just wild to think about.
Exactly. So for today's deep dive, we're looking at a highly detailed draft press release. This is from July 2026, issued by a company called EON AI Ventures.
Right, and they're announcing a new work intelligence module.
Yeah, it's called Competence IQ. And the whole mission of our deep dive today is to explore how these high-stakes industries are fundamentally changing how they measure a worker's ability to do their job.
Shifting away from that sunny day piece of paper.
Exactly, moving to undeniable, tangible proof. Okay, let's unpack this because we really have to understand just how fragile the current system of proving competence actually is before we can, understand the technology trying to fix it.
Well, what's fascinating here is the sheer scale of the consequences when that gap you just described is ignored by the industry.
Yeah.
If we look at the core data driving this release, industry investigations across the board consistently show this really terrifying, undeniable pattern.
Like, how bad are we talking?
Well, when we look at major industrial accidents, we're talking offshore, rig explosions, chemical spills, catastrophic aerospace failures. They're almost never caused by a valve just randomly breaking.
Or a machine spontaneously combusting out of nowhere.
Right, exactly. The vast majority are actually attributed to human and organizational factors. Equipment failure is actually the minority cause.
Wow. So it's mostly human error.
Yes. But despite knowing that, how have operators been proving that their workers are safe to be on the site? They've been relying on what the press release perfectly describes as paper assertions.
Just file cabinets full of documents asserting that a worker took a test.
Exactly. True. Empirical evidence of how that work was actually performed in the field. Under pressure, it just didn't exist. There was simply no mechanism to capture and synthesize it.
I mean, it's the equivalent of a supervisor looking at a spreadsheet and saying, well, the database says John passed his safety module in 2024, so John must be perfectly safe to operate this highly volatile chemical pump today.
Right, it's just an assertion.
And since we've established that this simple paperwork is completely failing to prevent these human-caused incidents, we really need to understand how this new technology from EON AI Ventures bridges that gap.
Quite a leap.
Yeah, like, how does a software module take us from merely asserting someone is competent to actually proving it without a shadow of a doubt? I want to know the mechanics of this.
Well, that is exactly where the architecture of Competence IQ comes in. And it's incredibly layered. It doesn't just look at a multiple choice test score. It acts as an active evidence layer for workforce competence. It pulls together a multi-layered competence record from across EON's broader work intelligence platform.
So what does that actually look like in practice?
It's a synthesis of multiple data streams. First, it includes scored simulations of approved procedures. Second, it layers in verified records of actual real-world field work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it also tracks a worker's assessed ability to recognize abnormal operating conditions.
Wait, let's pause on that for a second. Recognizing abnormal operating conditions.
Yeah.
So that means the system isn't just grading them on whether they know how to push the right buttons when everything is going perfectly.
Exactly.
It's actively tracking if they notice when a pressure gauge is, like, creeping into the red during a simulation, or if they spot a leak during a field assessment.
Precisely. It is measuring cognitive awareness, not just mechanical repetition. It also rigorously measures their understanding of permits and isolations.
And for you listening who might not spend your days on an oil rig or a factory floor, we should probably clarify what that means.
Good call.
A permit is essentially the strict legal and operational authorization to even begin a dangerous task, right?
Right.
And an isolation is the physical act of locking a system down. Like physically putting a padlock on a massive valve so that highly pressurized gas absolutely cannot flow into the pipe while a worker is inside wrenching on it.
Yeah, it's literally a life or death procedure, not just a bureaucratic form.
Exactly. And the system demands proof that the worker deeply understands those specific isolations.
It does. But here is the crucial mechanical difference in how Competence IQ handles this data. Every single one of these records carries an expiration date.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they trace all the way back to the customer's own control documents and engineering procedures. And most importantly, every single record requires a physical signature from a qualified, named human assessor.
So it's not just the AI rubber stamping the data.
Exactly. No rubber stamps.
Wait, if I'm a frontline worker on an offshore oil rig or an aerospace mechanic, isn't this just a massive avalanche of new data to get lost in?
I mean, it sounds like a lot.
To me, this sounds exactly like an airplane's black box. A black box collects thousands of data points per second, which is incredibly detailed and, absolutely fantastic for figuring out what went wrong after the plane has already crashed.
Right, after the fact.
But is a giant pile of granular data actually useful to a supervisor beforehand? How do you keep an operational manager from just drowning in thousands of micro records of every single thing a worker has ever clicked on or touched?
That is a very valid concern. And it's something Dan Lajerskar, the founder and chairman of EON AI Ventures, addresses directly in the architecture of the system.
Okay, what does he say?
He points out that competence has been a mere documentation exercise for decades, entirely because the evidence didn't exist. But this new system isn't about hoarding a mountain of raw data. It's entirely about synthesis.
Synthesis, okay.
Yeah, the machine learning within the platform takes all those disparate data points, the VR simulations, the field verification logs, the hazard recognition reaction times, and synthesizes them into a single unified competence record.
So it does the heavy lifting.
Exactly. The philosophy here is that the moment you can show exactly what happened when a person did a job, you shift the paradigm. The AI correlates a digital simulation click to a real-world procedural step.
So competence stops being this abstract assertion floating in a filing cabinet somewhere.
Right, and it becomes tangible, actionable proof. So to answer your question, it's not a black box you look at after the disaster. The synthesis turns it into an active filter designed to prevent the disaster from happening in the first place.
I gotcha. But if the AI is synthesizing all this into a unified record, we still run into a distribution problem, right?
How so?
Well, raw data, or even perfectly synthesized data, is utterly useless or, honestly, highly dangerous if the wrong people are looking at it in the wrong way.
That's very true.
Like, if a supervisor sees too much, they micromanage. If a worker sees too little, they lack direction. How does this system distribute this highly sensitive knowledge across a massive industrial organization without causing total chaos on the factory floor?
Well, they manage exactly that problem through what they call the 5 surfaces.
5 surfaces?
Yeah. These are 5 distinct interfaces, and they aren't just different views of the same dashboard. Each surface is strictly designed to answer one single, specific question for a very specific role within the organization.
So they keep the data firmly in its lane.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The first surface is the EON Passport. This is a worker-owned record. It answers a very direct question for the individual worker.
Which is?
What am I qualified for right now? And what specific training or assessment do I need to take next? It's completely personalized to them and entirely in their control to view.
Oh, that shifts the power dynamic completely. Instead of waiting for HR or a manager to tell a worker they're out of compliance, it gives the worker agency over their own professional standing.
It really does.
But if the passport gives the worker their own status, there must be a friction point when they actually show up for a shift.
Yep.
Like, how does the person managing the work know they're ready?
That is where the second surface comes in, which is the CRE board. This is built specifically for frontline supervisors. It answers whether the specific crew they have assigned is actually capable of performing tomorrow's specific high-hazard job.
So what does this all mean in practice? Let's rethink how supervisors usually operate.
Sure.
Normally, they just look at a schedule to see if enough bodies are showing up. But this crew board sounds more like a sports coach checking their roster the night before a championship game.
That's a great way to look at it.
Like, it's not just about who is on the team, but whether you have the exact right mix of specific skills to execute tomorrow's playbook safely.
Exactly. It actively highlights if the human factors are capable of executing that specific game plan. It operationalizes the data for immediate, localized safety.
That makes total sense for the front lines.
But leadership needs a different view, which brings us to the third surface, the gap board. This is for executives.
And what does that show?
It provides an anonymized, macro-level view showing exactly where operational procedures are failing in practice across the entire company and how quickly those organizational gaps are being closed.
Okay, so it tells leadership where the systemic risk lies, without exposing the individual worker.
Right, which is vital for keeping executives focused on systems rather than micromanaging individuals.
Makes sense. What about the people who actually enforce the regulations?
That is the fourth interface, the evidence packet. This is a highly streamlined, plain document designed specifically for auditors and regulators.
No frills.
Exactly. Its only job is to trace a single, specific qualification all the way down to its root evidence, the exact time-stamped simulation, the verified field log.
So if an incident happens or an audit is called, this provides the unassailable paper trail.
Yes. And finally, the fifth interface is the Assessor Console. This is the gateway.
The gateway.
Every single qualification decision, all that synthesized AI data, must pass through this console and be actively approved by a named human being.
Wow, okay. This raises an important question because that feels like a massive philosophical statement.
It really is.
We're talking about a sophisticated work intelligence platform built by an AI ventures company. Yet the ultimate irony here is that they aren't letting the AI make the final call.
Not at all.
The fact that EON requires a named human assessor to sign off on every single qualification decision demonstrates a profound commitment to human-in-the-loop governance.
It's a critical safeguard.
The AI gathers the complex evidence, it synthesizes the proof from across different platforms, but it forces the ultimate accountability back onto a single named human being.
Exactly. The software refuses to take the liability of saying someone is safe. It only provides the proof so a human expert can confidently make that declaration.
Which logically brings us to the most sensitive friction point of this entire deep dive.
The privacy aspect.
Yeah, because if you're giving leadership, supervisors, and named assessors this level of microscopic, granular tracking about every single worker's daily performance, I mean, it sounds like an absolute dystopian privacy nightmare.
It definitely could be.
If I'm a worker, my first thought is, great, corporate Big Brother isn't just watching me. They have an AI actively grading my every wrench turn. How does EON prevent this massive safety instrument from inevitably being weaponized into a tool for corporate surveillance and punishment?
It's arguably the single most critical hurdle for adoption in unionized, heavy industries. And EON seems acutely aware of the danger.
So what's their fix?
According to the release, they designed the system so that its anti-surveillance measures are strictly enforced in the actual software architecture, not just in a flimsy corporate policy that a new VP of HR could rewrite tomorrow.
Code is law here.
Exactly. The outputs we discussed are separated into impenetrable lanes. For example, the individual records in the EON Passport. Those are architecturally locked to be used strictly for qualification and coaching.
Ah, I see.
The software literally prevents that competence data from being exported or joined to HR systems governing compensation, ranking, or annual appraisals.
Wow, that's huge.
And furthermore, that executive gap board, it will actively refuse to render data if the aggregate result resolves to a group small enough that an individual worker could be identified.
Wait, so if an offshore team only has, like, 3 specialized pipe fitters on it, the software will just flat out refuse to give leadership the performance gap data for that specific unit.
Yeah.
Just because it would be too easy for a manager to guess which of the 3 is struggling.
Exactly. The system mathematically prioritizes worker anonymity over executive visibility at the micro level.
That is fascinating.
And they back this architectural lockup with what they call the worker data charter.
What's that?
Every single deployment of Competence IQ ships with this charter, which contains 3 binding contractual commitments that the customer must agree to.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, a person's competence record never sets their pay. Second, anything a worker self-reports carries complete amnesty and cannot be used against them. And third, no adverse action is ever taken automatically. Every consequence requires a human decision.
Hold on. Here's where it gets really interesting because I have to challenge that second point.
The amnesty.
Yeah, total amnesty.
Yeah.
Let's map out a real-world scenario. A worker on a highly volatile energy infrastructure project completely botches a critical life-saving safety procedure.
Okay.
Say they strip a high-pressure flange bolt and just leave it.
Oh.
But they admit it to the system. Doesn't granting them total amnesty for a critical failure pose a catastrophic risk to the company? How can an operator just let a massive safety violation go without consequence just because the worker logged it?
It's a highly counterintuitive approach to traditional management, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture of high-hazard environments, it's actually the only mathematical way to ensure systemic safety.
How so?
Dan Lajerskar's philosophy on this is incredibly sharp. He states in the release, if people believe a tool is grading them, they stop telling it the truth, and then it is worth nothing to anybody.
Wow, that's profound.
Let's look at your stripped bolt scenario. If admitting that mistake means the worker might get fired, suspended, or lose a critical safety bonus, human nature dictates they will simply hide the mistake.
Yeah, they'll walk away.
Or they'll figure out how to game the simulation or forge the field report to cover their tracks. And from a pure safety perspective, hidden incompetence is infinitely more dangerous than admitted incompetence.
Because if it's hidden, that high-pressure flange blows out next month and takes down the entire facility.
Exactly. But when that incompetence is admitted, without fear of reprisal, you can act on it immediately. You can send a crew to fix the bolt today. You can retrain the worker. You can use the crew board to ensure they aren't assigned to that specific task tomorrow.
So it's about immediate mitigation.
Right. These protections, this amnesty, they aren't some generous union concession or a soft PR stunt. They are the fundamental structural mechanism that ensures the data feeding the AI is actually truthful. Without the charter, the evidence layer collapses into a fiction.
That reframes the entire concept for me. The amnesty isn't a loophole. The amnesty is the engine of truth for the whole system.
Exactly.
If the workers don't trust it, the AI has nothing real to synthesize.
Bingo.
So taking a step back, we've explored the mechanics of how Competence IQ works under the hood. We've seen how it aims to eliminate these devastating human-caused disasters by demanding synthesized proof rather than paper assertions.
Yes, we have.
And we've unpacked how it fiercely protects worker privacy to ensure that the data it relies on is grounded in reality. What does this mean for you, the listener, and for the future of how your work is actually governed?
It's a big shift.
Looking at the rollout details in the release, this doesn't just flood the market overnight. Competence IQ is slated to roll out to design partners in the third quarter of 2026.
Right, and they are specifically targeting the real heavy hitters: oil and gas, mining, aerospace maintenance, global energy infrastructure.
But what is truly revealing about their approach is that it starts in what they call shadow mode.
Shadow mode.
Yeah, it doesn't go live immediately. It runs quietly in the background, ingesting historical data the customer already holds, and produces hypothetical records and evidence packets before any supervisor or executive ever sees an interface or makes a decision.
Which is an incredibly measured, cautious rollout strategy. Shadow mode proves the system's synthesis works on historical data before anyone makes a live, life or death operational decision based on it.
It's basically a test run.
Exactly. It allows the company to see if the AI's assessment of competence matches the reality on the ground. And this cautious pacing makes perfect sense when you consider the background provided in the source material.
Right. EON AI Ventures is not some fly-by-night software startup that just appeared yesterday to capitalize on an AI trend.
Not at all. They are building this work intelligence platform on a 25-year foundation of immersive learning technology, having deployed systems across more than 80 countries.
That's a lot of experience.
Over a quarter century, they have learned that you cannot apply the Silicon Valley mantra of move fast and break things when you are dealing with high-hazard industrial work. Because breaking things means breaking people.
Wow. Yeah.
Shadow mode is a deliberate change management tool. It builds irrefutable trust in the data before the data is allowed to govern the work.
Which is exactly why that 25-year history matters so much. They know the psychology of adoption. And for you listening to this, I want you to think about your own daily reality.
Yes.
Think about how often you just click through a mandatory annual training module, you let the corporate video play on mute in the background while you answer emails, just so you can check a box at the end and get back to your actual job.
Nice.
We have all done it.
Oh, absolutely.
But imagine a workplace where that box checking is no longer accepted as proof. Imagine a world where your daily verified expertise, the actual synthesized proof of your competence in the field, becomes your living, breathing resume.
It changes everything.
A world where you are judged not by a multiple-choice test you took 5 years ago, but by your verified, undeniable ability to handle today's complex problems. It fundamentally shifts the entire relationship between a worker, their employer, and the intrinsic value of their own skills.
It absolutely does. It forces a level of daily excellence and accountability that passive paperwork could never achieve.
Right.
But, as we look at this incredible technological leap toward perfect, synthesized, auditable proof, it leaves us with a rather profound, lingering question to consider.
Okay, what's that?
If a system like Competence IQ can perfectly and audibly prove that a worker was 100% competent at the exact moment of their certification, If every VR simulation was passed with flying colors, every field record was perfectly verified, and the human assessor signed off. How do we account for the entirely unquantifiable human factors on the actual day of a high-hazard job?
Oh, that's a really good point.
If a worker has a massive emotionally draining argument at home right before their shift, or if they haven't slept in 24 hours because they were up with a sick child.
The system wouldn't know that.
Exactly. No digital simulation, no historical field record,
Right.
and no AI synthesis can predict that sudden catastrophic drop in cognitive ability.
Wow, yeah.
So as we build these perfect software architectures of evidence, and as we rely on them to guarantee that the person behind the wheel of that truck in the blizzard is perfectly qualified, we have to ask ourselves something.
What's that?
In our relentless quest for perfect empirical proof of competence, are we forgetting that human beings are, by their very nature, unpredictable variables that no algorithm can ever fully capture?